Great. So we're gonna start the first day of this session. First session of the day. Wow, looks like I partied really hard. All right, cool. We would have one of the core challenges that we look at right now, India as a market. There are quite a few sports-based games that are coming out, and cricket is obviously our favorite, right? Apart from Bollywood, and all the publishers who have been publishing cricket games, the core challenge is that how can I solve the innovation is the biggest challenge for them, correct? I mean, how I can differentiate my game from others, and how does what are the things that I can make happen? I mean, create new things that can really engage the user. So that's a conversation that has been they're up there for some time. So we brought in publishers who have been doing really great jobs. So we have to discuss this topic. So we have Paul Collins from Stick Sports. I'm sure everyone played stick cricket, so he's here. And we have Satyap, who is doing a VR game. I'm sure you might have seen that into the booth there. He has a booth in the expo hall. And then we have Raj from NextWave, one of the largest user base for the cricket game, WCC. I'm sure most of you have played it. And then Manish from Nazara, had a game with Virat Kohli there. So and we would have Rishi to moderate. Rishi is a pretty veteran into this industry, did a cricket game in the past, so I'm sure he would like to take it over from here. Great. Thank you so much again for coming in. Yep.
Hello. Thanks, Imtiaz. Okay, good morning everyone, and good morning to the panel. This is echoing. Can you put the echo a little less? Hello? Better? Okay, so thanks everyone for being here. I think this is a pretty good panel to talk about cricket games, and I'm gonna just dive straight in. And while you're talking, you can give us a small introduction of yourself. But I'm gonna dive straight into the question, and before you start answering, just give one or two lines about yourself. And the first thing that I'm gonna ask or project is, we've been talking about the Indian games industry going to $1 billion by 2020. But we've got this hypothesis, and some people on this panel have a hypothesis that it's not just the Indian games industry. We're talking about the cricket games industry going to $1 billion by 2020. So what do you guys think about that? Manish, I want to start with you.
I think we have some of the guys in the audience which are going to make it happen. There is Harsh sitting there, and there's Shivat sitting there, and there is DevTouch guy sitting there. So I think fundamentally, I believe a couple of points. We are a cricket crazy nation. Your digital adoption is really happening. If you can create formats which can create a virtual cricket game which is a joy to watch, whether you get into a esports arena, whether you want to get into a sports fantasy arena, whether you want to get into a mobile game, M-Sports, tournament-based competition happening. So there are multiple formats which are available for us to exploit. If we continue to look at a narrow prism of mobile game, ad model, it will never happen. But if we kind of expand our vistas and try to look at a completely 360 manner on which how a cricket game could be made of outstanding camaraderie, community, spectator, both from mobile devices, games, tournaments or cups happening offline. I think that's where the thinking and investment and efforts will happen. And there are all signs pointing towards that. The success of the sports fantasy has been a great thing. What Raj has achieved here is a great, from a game engagement point of view. And I think a constant and concerted effort towards revenue and monetization will make it happen. I believe that the physical experiences like what we are, Smash is doing, if you were to bring that experiences on cricket, there'll be people willing to pay you 500, 800,000 rupees for 15 minutes, 20-minute sessions. So I'm not just looking at $1 billion coming from mobile gaming ad revenues, because then we are kind of fooling ourselves. However, if you're looking at interactive entertainment with the context of cricket happening in all touch points, then it's definitely a possibility. Whether it's 20 or 22, that's a nuance.
Does anyone want to pick up from there? Raj?
Yeah, I think, it's definitely a possibility in the sense that with a billion population and with such love and, and dedication for this game, and I think it's just the business model and the investment and the dedication into building the games where it can produce excellent results. I think I see great opportunity there. That's why we stay so committed to building this cricket game. We built it over multiple years, and I'm sure that in the next 15 next 12 months you'll see a huge this thing. We're already seeing 2 years back versus now. 2 years back, 90% of our in-app revenues used to come outside India, and 90% of the downloads were from India. But today, this year, we are seeing 90% of in-app purchases happening in India and 10% outside India. So India as a market, we are seeing huge changes, very, very optimistic, and I would never, have believed 2 years back that I would see something like this. I think in-app is picking up in a huge fashion, and the signs are very, very good.
Do you guys want to add to that?
Yeah, actually, I think it's very feasible for that with that number. The interesting thing is that it's a statistic I quoted yesterday, and it's perhaps more relevant now. I remember, because we've been around for quite a few years and before mobile started, and I remember, I think it was 2007, 2008. I was reading some article about the size of the cricket market, and that's the whole of the cricket market. From bats and the franchises, the matches, the players, and everything to do with cricket, the cricket world, and where the revenue was really being generated. And the figure was, we had just started in the games doing a cricket game predominantly, where we were making most of our money out of UK and Australia. And then I saw this figure that 70% of the cricket world, in financial terms, was coming out of India. And that's for a market which at the time was very much driven on through TV, through television. That's where the mass consumers were coming to connect. And it was driven through brands association, through everything to that, to a mass market. And for us, ever since then, we've always assumed at some point 70% of the cricket games market will come out of India. So we've been sort of sitting there waiting, and we're still trying to keep up with other people in this market as it grows and grows and grows. But there's no doubt it's on the verge of overtaking. It's certainly overtaking the numbers, that's for sure. But it's overtaking in terms of revenue some of the other markets, and then it will start really climbing.
Sharath, do you want to add?
Yeah, I think the way that we are also looking towards how the experiential, the players' situation is also. We're trying to get different techniques. So what we're also trying to focus more on is try and see, if we can try and push towards cricket training. So training experiences using this. So I'm thinking a part of that segment that you're talking about comes from learning and development also in cricket.
Using digital mediums.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I'm going to switch gears now, and in trying to do this, do you think everyone is thinking this way? And because of that, the flip side of this is, are we getting saturated with too many cricket games on the store? What do you guys think?
I think it's true of any of the popular categories, and whether you take racing, football, all the popular categories tend to be very, very crowded, and that's a reality of when everybody wants to have a go at it. So it's very same with cricket. But what I have seen is that the audience is always looking for new content. we've seen that whenever there's a new cricket game that is being launched, out there, we see a lot of audience from our game go experience the other game. So there's the audience is always looking for something new. So what happens is that if the game is able to retain the audience, some of them stay back. But we also seen that people go try out the new game, and then they get back. So the people are hungry, and this thing happens. Yeah.
So you're saying that quality holds true even if you have a lot of junk coming
Correct.
the way.
Yeah, there is a hunger for new content, but if an existing player can hold on, with quality standards and things like that, you're able to get back your audience. But the fact that it's cluttered and there's a lot of new players coming is something, a function of the market and the opportunities, and that is something one has to live with and compete.
Does that make it difficult for a new player to break in?
I would think in cricket category, it is not a problem. It's very interesting because any new cricket game, people get the, try to download the game. And they experience it for at least, a week or a few times of play. That's one thing I've seen. But if you have to retain beyond the 1 week, 1 month thing, then you have to have, deep commitment into building the game.
Okay. Considering that there's so many games in the market, and you guys, of course, have been doing it for some time, so I'm going to ask a little bit of a difficult question here. Why haven't we seen a cricket game in the top 10 grossing games in the India charts yet? And what would it take to do that? Any ideas?
Okay, I'll go first. So actually, speaking about World Cricket Championship, in our point of view, what we did was that we wanted to fundamentally build a very strong, good game first. So we didn't go about building a strong economy as yet, because the strong economy, all the other things follows having a solid game first. So we were very focused on, because the other reason is that sports simulation, is a very hard category to crack, because it requires a lot of effort, big team, to make those animations, make the game realistic. So you have it takes quite a bit of time. So we wanted to solve the quality of the game issue first, and then build the game economy. I do understand that currently almost all of the cricket games don't have a very strong economy, which has a big impact on in-app revenues. But going forward, our next 3 build will be strengthening those features and in-game economy as we go along. So our belief was that first, fix the game, do a great job of it, and then move into in fixing the game economy and the in-app issue. Now we are on that path.
Manish?
So I think that I'll just make 3 points. One, just building on what Raj says, if you do not have a D30 retention of 10%, you do not have your session lengths which allow you to have 10 minutes, 13 minutes, 17-minute sessions happening, you will not have enough skin in the game from a player point of view to nudge him to take out his wallet and pay for things. I think, barring maybe WCC, even all the games we have done, it would be 3-4% D30 retention. And we can't hope to make a business out of in-app purchase till we have fixed the basic retention engagement thingy. And I think that's what the awareness and mindset is building in Indian ecosystem, that there is no shortcut. We got to do it, build on engine to get D1, D7 fixed, then have enough content to get D30 fixed. So I think that awareness and mindset and maturity is coming in, and that will take its own time, right? The second thing I believe is for a consumer to pay, we have a very deep-rooted cultural thing that if it's a digital good, it needs to be free. We are not going to pay for that unless there is a really what's in it for me, which is coming. And again, which has been demonstrated in the amount of money which people are putting in a sports fantasy platform. So if Google were to count that in the grossing charts, which they don't, you would have some different statistics happening today. So we need to figure out the tangible benefit, whether it's a 2 seconds of fame or whether it's a real money. How can we really get into game of skill? For example, me and Raju were discussing yesterday night, how can we really have a 1 versus 1 a match, a wager happening in his game. And that could be a reason for me to come and pay for in-app purchases and kind of move up the grind. I think the third thing is the propensity of a consumer to pay $500 for a movie. They're okay to do that, or a 200 rupees. But paying online for a 10 bucks, they think still in their mind, they're not very clear on why are they doing and what are they getting. So again, brings to my point is that we need to really figure out what are the offline transactions on the digital platform which could be done to us to get the money out of from the consumer, because then the context changes and my willingness to pay is higher. So that's.
So the offline component as opposed to the online, I completely agree on. But then how do you explain the Teen Patti games still being up there, and can the cricket games actually beat the Teen Patti games? Because, you know, cricket is more inherent in Indian DNA than Teen Patti is.
So absolutely, and that's what makes me believe that $1 billion cricket will happen. Because we all know Teen Patti game mechanics is familiar. If I were to draw a table, Teen Patti cricket game mechanics, everybody on the road is an expert on cricket, right? So I know the game mechanics. If I'm able to make it easy for him to play like Teen Patti, then I'm doing it. If there is a wagering which makes me take money, you can introduce that in cricket. And then we are very creative. We will figure out offline ways of sharing the loot, which is happening in the Teen Patti system. And that's what kind of really grow it very, very organically. All we need is the ingredients are there, the building blocks are there. Just figure out how to take the people on a path where they start having a facilitation of this kind of game mechanics.
Does anyone want to add, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult question actually to answer, because I mean, we've been doing it, you know, free to play since 2010, and we've been struggling with it. The actual mechanic, in fact, the original game was really designed as a premium title, just as premium was falling off the charts. And we were about to launch, and we had to rather quickly switch to a freemium model. Can
you hold the mic a
bit closer? Yeah. And so when we did do the build, we very much built it with the UK and Australian audience in mind. So we didn't consider anything that we might think that the Indians might want to do and how they might want to purchase, except, you know, having a very superficial perspective that it would have to be cheaper. And the truth is, it doesn't have to be just cheaper, it has to be more compelling, and it has to be more culturally driven. And we've learnt the hard way over time that, you know, you don't have the same games playing history as we do in the UK and Australia. And so, you know, we had to start to think about new models of, you know, why would you want to buy something? What is the purpose for it? What does it do for you? Whereas in the UK and Australia, it was a little bit easier to consider that. And we're not there yet. We're still struggling, like everyone else.
So how long before we see a game in the top 10? 12 months, 18 months, 2 months?
I think, in under 2 years, you should be able to see a cricket game hitting that thing. Also, one very important, nice point.
We'll keep you to your word then.
Okay. So Manish was making an interesting point yesterday about evolution of gaming market and monetization. You made the point that early on, it's the casino games that tend to monetize better, followed by the sports. I think we are in that transition phase. So that's a good point, I thought.
So just to kind of, if you look at the US pie charts of freemium mobile gaming, there was the first time 37% used to be the casino contribution in 2010-11. Then the sports started growing, and then the RTS game happened. We have seen the first 2 years of the uncles and aunties of Teen Pattis dominating the grossing charts. Now, as Raj says, with engagement retention, with at least a couple of games sorted, you would see the next 2 years, whether Paul or Raj or somebody else somebody will crack that particular top 10 which you are talking about. And I think that's 2 to 3 years from now. Then your wave of RTS, RPG, SLG, CCG, and NEGs will come into picture.
Cool. We hope to see that in the next couple of years. Okay, another very prickly point, and half the players here do this and half don't. So the question really is, how important is IP for a successful cricket game? And if you do go and pick up an IP, is it sustainable? Paul, I want to start with you this time because you guys have been famously not using IPs till much recently.
Well, until this year, actually, and thanks to Nazara, actually, and Manish. But strangely, it isn't the first one we've done, and I hope it's not news to you, Manish. We did do one back in 2006 in a Java game with an English player, or ex-player, and that was a complete disaster. It didn't work for us at all. But it was, Java-based games. And so what we found was that we were very brand-focused. Our own game was very brand focused, and we wanted to drive that. So we have somebody who actually in the business who is very focused the way how we present ourselves all the time, and it's very focused around putting the name out there, and the name is quite strong and simple. So we didn't feel that it was fundamentally required. And interestingly, in the mobile market, sort of IP in sports games is even though there's some very, very big titles that have used it, it's relatively rare. It doesn't happen as regularly as it might have done on other platforms. So we didn't think we felt the need. But certainly when we came to the Indian market and trying to see how we might be able to approach it differently, and knowing that these sportsmen are absolute gods here, we had to really try and see how that might work, how might apply with our game. And it's a challenging project, but it was really good to work with Nazara's team on it. Raj?
Yeah, the thing about having a big celebrity IP or celebrity name on the cricket, on this thing gives a great start for the game. You have these celebrities, you're leveraging the celebrities' visibility, social media connections. So it gives the game a fantastic start. I've seen that of a lot of games. And the question is that if the game is able to retain that audience, then it works for the game. But what happens is if you don't have a great game, then the celebrity thing kind of fades off. So it takes for 2 to 3 months. I've seen these launches; they work really great, and then they tend to taper off if you're not able to retain. So if you have a combination of great game and celebrity, it's a fantastic combination.
What's your experience? Because you guys have done a lot of IP.
See, my experience is very simple. Last 7 years, I've been doing IP-based games, whether in Hollywood for movies, now in India with IPs. And I've always maintained that IP can only let you discovery and sampling. If the game doesn't perform, the game doesn't perform. It's like Salman Khan or Shah Rukh Khan can get you the movie opening, but if after that movie doesn't work, it doesn't work. What I've seen is the seasonal IPs like IPL teams that work. They are more, let's say, less ruthless because the fans are more engaged, and in that 45-day, 50-day time period, there's huge amount of activity was happening, and if the franchise is far more engaged with you, you could really sustain it for a longer time. Versus a celebrity where you can get social media, you can get your initial push fans coming in, but if the game doesn't work, game doesn't work. So Raj is being very nice to say 3 months. I would say 2 weeks is more than enough. If you have a shitty game, 2 weeks you're done.
So then is it sustainable considering how much BCCI asked for licensing and ICC and IPL?
So it's a function of what is that you're looking at. For example, if you think let's say you're a corporate, you really have a late start, you do not have any vehicle to get into the arena, and you want some grand entry to be made. Go ahead, put in your dollars, which you have in bank, and try to figure it out what needs to be done. If you can find a great developer in a game, you hit it big. And if you can't, you keep trying. So fundamentally, IP game really only works when you have money in the bank. And you are saying that, hey, listen, I am committed in this space. And whether you set up your own team or find a partner, but I will keep building on it. So again, another thing when you're looking at an IPs like BCCI, IPL or a celebrity, it's a 3-year, 5-year horizon you are looking at versus a 6 months, 9 months horizon. Because you believe that either in-house or outside, you'll be able to find that right game, which would serve as game as a service, longer shelf life rather than having a 3-month, 2-month, 2 weeks shelf life.
Okay, so switching gears a little bit and coming back to the initial point of saying that, okay, if we have to do cricket and make cricket the cricket digital industry a billion-dollar industry, what else do we need to do outside of the traditional games? And I want to start with you, Sharath, on the stuff that you guys have been doing with VR games, and then taking forward what other people have ideas of where all we can expand the digital games experience with cricket.
Sure. So we've been trying to build different kind of engagements for the player by itself. So number one that we tried out was virtual cricket. So having a complete experience by holding one of the HTC Vive controllers and then swinging it around. Again, it gave us a little bit of leeway in saying that, yeah, okay, fine, let's try and push the tech even more. So that's when we try to use augmented reality as well and try to get fan-based cards and things like that, which could work out in a different way. So I think there is a lot of tech out there that we can try and invest into this to try and get a better, industry for ourselves.
Is there a viable business model? Ask you first, and then maybe Manish can chime in.
So our business model is basically it's more of the client taking it out from us and then putting it out to the stalls or wherever they want to place it at. But what the end game also we are looking at is trying to fork it in two different directions. One, to have a release candidate which would be on something like Steam Store. Again, we are trying to push two different kind of things. One, having kind of a multiplayer interface in which people can try and use their friends at home, have a party, a small cricket party within a small space by itself. Again, the second part of it would be completely skinning it for a specific brand. So let's say like a Kolkata brand wants to have a complete IP based on their experiences. So we can do that and give it out. So it's again, a different market altogether.
And are there enough people playing it when you do the reskin in the different touch points and things like that?
I didn't get you.
In suppose it's at Smash or whichever touch point it is at, do we have enough players?
I think there are very few players as of now, and it's still emerging as of now because people haven't tried and pushed towards it. Like as of now, it's been a year since we've thought about the virtual cricketing experience, and we really thought by now somebody would have come out, but we haven't seen another VR cricket experience from the country. So I can clearly say that there are very few players in the market, and it's better that more players get so that we have healthy competition running as well.
So there's a possible future opportunity
for sure.
Manish, what's your experience? You were saying now some numbers that Smash might have been doing.
So, see, just to build on his point, from a business point of view, there is productization as a template, where he's talking about living rooms. I can give you as a consumer good. I can give it to the buildings, the all gated communities which are coming up across the country, and there could be a virtual cricket zone experience which could be created in your entertainment clubhouses, whatever it is. And then the third piece is just really having a short format, a medium format and a big format offline experiences, which is where your question of Smash really comes into picture. Now, they have 24 outlets today, which I was looking at. I was looking at a 4,000 square feet outlet to a 50,000 square feet outlet. It's not all cricket. It's a combination of various variety of games. But if you were to kind of really have a full stadium experience, you being the player and kind of really vicariously living that whole experience through a augmented reality, I think a shorter format which allows you, what is the constraint here? Constraint is your retail space, the rent which you are going to pay. Now that is more acute in cities like, big cities like Bombay, becomes lesser issue there in the small, let's say, Lucknows of the world or maybe Nagpur of the world. Yeah, your rent cost may be low, but the pricing, you may not get the same $500, you get $200, but that's the relativity you will do it. In my opinion, paying for 15 minutes, 20 minutes for these kind of formats in places where you already have footfalls could be a model which is worth exploring. And we would love to explore that as in next couple of 3, 4, 5, 6 months to figure out what's the right experience. Because the important part, I think, which he's touched upon, how can you push tech to deliver a near real experience? Otherwise, it'll fall flat.
Cool. There's some cool experiences actually coming. Raj?
Yeah, I think there's a very good business case for VR cricket that he's talking about. See, one is once somebody has productized it, one you can license it, and that's one way to go. You could license it to the arcade guys, equipment manufacturers. That's one way to go about it. There's also that if you're a popular game yourself, you can also license it to the arcade guys. Like for example, Need for Speed is everywhere in all the arcades. You see how the game evolved and get into arcades, and it got into the arcade scene. Similarly, I think there's a huge opportunity because if you go to the arcade, gaming arcades, the cricket is absent totally. So I would think it's a huge opportunity that we should explore.
Paul, you were talking about some experience that you had in the past, you doing stick sports.
We mentioned it because I don't think that might be around yeah, so we were discussing it because you were talking about your project you've been working on now, and we did one many years ago in India. Actually, it was a client campaign, and we were discussing it last night with my colleague. Which client was it? And I think it might have been Accor Hotels, the people who own this hotel. And what we were doing is they were screening a match, or a series of matches in shopping centres here. And they needed, obviously, if they're screening a live match, there would be a lot of downtime, which would normally be filled by adverts. And they obviously didn't want to do that in that sort of event space. So they would... we gave them a version of Stick Cricket, which they loaded up onto a PC, and then they would have a compere, inviting people, passers-by to come and play, and they'd be giving away gifts and this, that, and the other. So it was very sort of an experience, and that was 10 years ago we were doing that, and it was a short campaign. It was paid for by the client, but I mean taking it just slightly further away, because I absolutely get it. Every point that was made there. I just wanted to say from a perspective of genres of cricket games, and I mean there is the holy grail of full-scale simulation, which often people want to go for, and I think there is a value for that. There's obviously a value for that, but there is a very broad market, and there needs to be games that meet all of those expectations, from super casual, arcadey style, to the hardcore player who's going to be committed, and he might go and feed into an esports environment for that. But there is, it's a very broad church, and it's just about getting it cricket themed as opposed to specifically, simulating the game.
Cool. We're talking about these live experiences, and a lot of times what we're seeing these days with live experiences is what people are doing with viewing of esports. So what's the potential of cricket esports, and what do you guys think of whether it's going to become a big thing in India or not?
I think esports is very important, for a game, these days, and some of the big titles have esports thing. It's actually an extension of your multiplayer mode. It's a way to engage. It's a great way to connect and engage with your hardcore gamers and reward them. And it also, very important from the standpoint of building your brand. So to that extent, esports is extremely critical for a game success in today's world. And we ourselves are working on the esports thing and should be up in the next few months. I think is very critical for a game's success. It helps building brand, builds engagement. It kind of becomes a huge marketing element to building the game. From a standpoint of India itself, cricket being absent in arcades is totally absent while we all love cricket so much. I think esports is a great way to engage with that audience across mobile and gaming arcades. We see a huge potential, so it is actually extension of the multiplayer mode that we are working on.
Just to build on his point, so since we announced esports in January, I've been doing my recce to a lot of tournaments happening in Bombay around Dota, CSGO, FIFA, at socials or at some other watering holes in Saturday and Sunday. You have anywhere between 500 to 1,000, 16, 18-year-olds to 23-year-olds coming in entry charge of 500 rupees. And there are leagues, formats, knockouts, and their finals happening, 10,000 rupees prizes. Whenever I see FIFA, I really honestly think, Raj, of WCC all the time. And I think that game, with such huge amount of beautiful animations and breadth of animations and array of animations, think of it on a projector being projected and streamed. There's these guys playing competitive matches of WCC, and there is tournament, there's 5,000, 10,000 rupees prize money happening. As you rightly said, I always think that that's a beautiful extension of whether it's a one versus one or it's a team versus team, whatever format we can evolve. But that's where this is really going to happen, right? Our masses, I don't think in near 5 years will understand CSGO, Dota, Counter-Strike, right? Or FIFA or LOL, but they understand cricket. And WCC, I don't know his numbers, but in a couple of million daily people playing and maybe spending an hour a day playing that. If we believe that there is a chance and opportunity of an spectator sports in digital video gaming to be created, I believe cricket is what going to happen here, which will have no other Chinese or American able to understand what the hell is happening here. While you try to make another CSGO in India on Mahabharata or Ramayana, you will take a lot of time to reach that stage. Plus, a guy who's playing CS will say, I'll play CS, why will I play Arjun shooting something, right? Well, cricket is there, and you understand the cricket better than anybody else, and that's where I believe the game has to be beautiful in watching. And then only you'll become a spectator. And that's where I think studios which are investing huge amount of money on building that 2 years, 3 years, 4 years to build the basic engine itself for a deeply engaged, realistic simulation user, hardcore user if I may call it. That's what I see this really helping a very strong pillar towards that $1 billion revenue kind of a market. So just to add, I would really want to see, like we have a Virat Kohli in real life.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, next point actually. Do you think we'll find a superstar esports virtual player?
So superstar gets made when money comes in. Yeah. There is no superstar without money, right? And the moment you have a virtual esports cricket money coming in, you have a prize money of 1 crore, you will have people really slogging their asses off to get to that crore bucks. And their skills will be breathtaking for us to watch. We love watching Virat Kohli because of the amazing stuff which he does on the pitch. And exactly if a player can do that, we'll have superstars. And 3 years from now, that's what if we are able to create guys who have bigger and similar fan following on virtual cricket game, you have $1 billion guaranteed, because if you have those many spectators, the advertisers will come running to you.
Okay, so we know that in the esports space, you need a lot of strong community management to get it built up, and there's a lot of streaming, there's a lot of social sharing. How important is that for you guys today, and how much of that are you guys doing right now?
I mean, we do a lot. I mean, it's cricket is not the only sport we do. We also have tennis, which is very, very big because it's a much broader, more countries it goes into. However, the people who communicate with us most through social and forums and things like that are the cricket players. They are highly engaged. They're highly charged around around the sport. And we have to manage that very, very firmly. We've got actually somebody who's full-time managing that and trying to leverage it to our advantage to try and keep the conversation positive, which it not always is. But it's very useful as well because you won't survive unless you are getting feedback from your consumer base. If you produce something, you have to get feedback, and you can't just get it from the review systems that are in the app stores. You got to get it from people directly because you need to be able to talk to them. You need to be able to drill into an issue to really understand because otherwise they're just sending you a one-liner in a review, and you really can't make out what that actually means. It could be a number of reasons why. So having that sort of community management is an absolute requirement. You have to.
Do you guys have any stories that you can share? Sharat, sorry, you were going to say?
Yeah, so what we're also trying to do to enable things like that with the VR cricket experience that we have as a release product is to add things like Mixcast. So when you have that available and a person has a green screen, he can actually cast out his plays, and that will be available on social media and things like YouTube for the people to watch out for as well.
Raj, you were sharing some stories with us on some of the community.
Yeah. So actually, one of the good things that that happened around WCC was that we have a huge community, very vibrant community. There are about roughly around 30 Facebook groups. All of them very actively participating in the group. Our own Facebook group has very huge commitment, but also that they keep nagging you about when is your next update coming, when is this coming, and if you go to the YouTube channel, you'll see several thousands videos of people playing the game and put the highlights out there on YouTube. For example, now we are about to launch a big version end of November. We did a teaser ad and we shared it with the community. Ever since that, I'm not exaggerating, we had something like 100 plus calls every day. Our security guy documents, what is this call about? So 100 plus calls, some even coming at 2, 3 o'clock in the night. He's not able to sleep. He was complaining. And so this is the community calling up. And there is, if you go to the YouTube, you will see that people have recorded the conversation that they had with us on the telephone and put it out there. And there's a huge debate on, these guys are from Chennai, how they're speaking in Hindi, but it's actually the security guy telling them they're working on something, and I heard them say that it'll be released in November end. So we had to tell the security guy, please don't say, give out all information, say that you're not supposed to. So there are YouTube recordings of a phone call conversation with our teams that people share. So it's wonderful, that you have, this huge community around your game. Sometimes, it is also very toxic, people sending out mails with, they're frustrated that, it's not yet out and it's taken so long. But there are pluses and minuses and you kind of have to live with it.
So what do you guys do to manage this stuff now?
Okay, all along, we were, the product manager was the only person handling the community. Now we realized, now we need a community manager. The last 3 months, we have a dedicated community manager who talks to the community and keeps them engaged. So their 8-hour job is to only talk to the community. Now we kind of, there's some peace with the project manager because now he can finally go and not take these calls and answer these emails every day. That's how we are handling it right now.
Okay, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about what are the other possible genres or other spaces that we could be looking at in the cricket space, to get to that $1 billion level. We've talked about on-ground, virtual, we've talked about, mobile games. What else is there?
I think strategy simulation has been lacking. This is the managing the players, the manager mode. Very strong, there's no title out there, very strongly exploits that audience. I see that as a as a big gap that one needs to this thing. Also, fantasy sports and already is a big thing. It's just begin to happen in a big way. But from my point of view, I mean, we are not in fantasy sports, but we are a big way in the strategy simulation. We're going to be there. I think that's a huge revenue earner. I think.
Cool. And I have another question. Maybe Paul can help out in this one. Is it possible to get a cricket game in the top grossing outside of India, in maybe Australia or UK? Have you guys done it before? What would you suggest to developers who are trying to do that?
It is possible to do, get it into the top 10. It's not easy to do, and you have to time it quite well. And we have a problem because we tend to. The two markets on their own are individually quite small. So we can't justify necessarily spreading the release across both. And also they talk to each other quite well. So we can't split, because the seasons are obviously opposite. We can't split and do the Australian launch at Christmas and do the UK launch in June. So we have to pick one. And we've often picked the Australian launch because it's our strongest market. And we can often get into the top 10, be it fairly briefly, but we can do that. Which is in itself a pretty good achievement for a title which is targeting predominantly men. I mean, 98% men is our target market. In markets which are quite mature and they do like their casual games and they're 60%, 55% of the market is women. So to be able to achieve that is quite an achievement. So it is possible. And
Paul, just one question: is UK bigger for cricket or Australia?
Sorry?
Is UK market in size, in revenue, possible revenue size for cricket bigger or
revenue-wise? For us, it's pretty close to each other, but Australia pips it,
okay.
and they're slightly better at spending.
And where would India fall into that?
It falls. But in-app purchases, it falls obviously much lower than that. Although that's changed radically over the last year, or significantly over the last year. But that it's compensated somewhat by the sheer volume which you monetize through advertising.
Cool. That's it from me. Do we have time for questions, Imtiaz? Do we have questions in the audience?
Hi guys, thanks for the session. I actually had a two-part question. The first is regarding the esport viability that you guys were mentioning. And like what Manish mentioned, that be the Dotas and the CSGOs and the LoLs and etc., even FIFA for that matter, they are predominantly played on consoles. And that's where their market lies. Like even FIFA mobile is pretty popular and pretty strong, even in grossing because of its FIFA console heritage. So we are not a big console market and we are slightly maybe going towards PC right now, but do we think that there is still market for this? The second question to that is, you guys mentioned that we need more and more games and like better quality and whatnot. But a chunk of the games, especially cricket games that we have in the market right now, they are pretty similar to each other in terms of how the gameplay is. There might be a few variations here and there. So my question is, are we experimenting enough? Because as you guys mentioned, we need to find that sweet spot that resonates with the bulk of users. And by and large, Indians are not gamers as yet. So I have many questions, but I'll limit it to this one.
So, two parts, since the question is in two parts. On the esports bit, I think the cricket would look at an mobile as a touch point. And how do you create, because the devices are improving considerably, I don't think going PC console would make sense for anyone to really look at. And you could really create the similar kind of celebration stroke competition environment on mobile devices when you're trying to do an offline event which is streamed on Twitch, YouTube, wherever it is. So I think that's the amount of investment on the game engine, game sizes. Raj was today morning breakfast telling that his game APK is not 200 MB. He's very gradually moving towards, kind of games which we see from Western world or Chinese of half a gig and all that stuff, because that's the kind of animation or a polish or a finish which you will kind of, if you can get it on mobile, you're pretty fine with that. On the second point, which you mentioned about not enough innovation, I think I just want to put it in perspective that you need to have a domestic market which is large enough. At the end of the day, I have got to pay my salaries for 2-member, 4-member development shop. I also need to have a quick validation of what I have got and see that whether I quickly put it in the market, see some good results, ensure that there is a continuity of cash flow to keep my outfit going, and then gradually figure it out. In my opinion, very unfair expectation for them to really build a game which is absolutely conducive for 2 years, 3 years later. It has to be a concurrent process like what Nextwave has done. 5 years, keep on generating revenues and keep on building on your game engine. I think that's a more prudent approach. Otherwise, we have seen many, many gaming studios falling by the wayside and trying to make the next best game, the best of the world, and not really seeing the light of the day. So I'm not a proponent of that approach ever. I believe that you need to have your cash in the bank. That gives you security and respite from any you need to go to people for knowing that where is the next month's salary check you have to kind of cut. Yeah.
So I want to quickly interject. Paul has to leave, so we're going to say bye to him. But we're going to thank you, Paul, for being here. And do we have time for a couple more questions?
Hi guys. So we know that with the rise of the fantasy sports and Teen Pati games and Rummy Circle, people are willing to pay even in India. And I'm talking about high rollers. So do you see that winning cash is a great motivation for people to start spending IAPs in a cricket game as well?
I think with Harsh sitting in the room, it's unfair for us to answer that question. Honestly, between Ramesh and Harsh, please get the mic to them.